Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, Mr. McBride, Senior, Mr. Minister, members of the Oireachtas, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like first of all to say thanks to you for the Centenary Committee for inviting me here to this celebration. Now may on way up, as often, on Guru, Tugudum, Benanshaw, because it's Rebralum, Benanshaw, in Warmask. And I'd like to, if I may at this stage, congratulate the committee on what seems to me to have been a very fine, meticulous and imaginative piece of organisation. I think they deserve tremendous credit to the chairman, Father Stanley, and the coordinator of the whole lot of them. I've been asked, just for a few moments, I was asked a day or two ago to say a few words on Patrick Duggan, who was an illustrious predecessor of mine here in Clonfert. He was Bishop of Clonfert, and he's a man I've always admired ever since I read a biography about him by a Father Thomas Brett years ago. And he enjoys, his portrait enjoys a special place of honour in my house. And the man himself enjoys a special place of admiration and affection in my own heart. And as I say, I was asked to say a few words about him. I had forgotten an awful lot of the detail that I read in the biography many years ago. And so after last Mass in Ballinasloe this morning, I had to sit down and jot down a few notes from the excellent article that Father Egan, as Dr. Egan of Portumna has, in A Forgotten Campaign, which is an excellent publication in itself. And I'd like to congratulate the editors and the contributors to that particular publication and recommend it to you. I want to put in a plug. I'm not getting any commission, but it's well worth it. So if you don't mind,
Hello, Bishop, and sisters, Reverend Fathers. I'm very honored to be given this opportunity of coming here to present at least the launching of this book, and also to learn more of the work which the Woodford Heritage Group has been doing. I think their work is extremely important for the preservation of our traditions and for learning more of the essentials that are required for freedom, and also to be a good Christian. I came here in the first place because we are honoring also a native of Woodford, Tommy Larkin, who died just 100 years ago in training jail. As you know, I've been involved with prisoners, Amnesty International, all over the world. And I felt that this was a remarkable occasion in that 100 years after one of your local boys started local freedom, that you should honor him in this way. I wish we did. This special includes it in the book. But apart from that, I'm very glad to be here to praise the work which Father Stanley, which Joseph Bishop, which everybody has been doing, in trying to give life to the Christian ideals, in trying to bring more reality to the Christian ideals. We are passing through a particularly difficult and dangerous period. We know the problems we have in our own country. These are things we could deal with if we were left to deal with them ourselves.
was here at a meeting which he had held, and he had held a number of meetings with local people before that. But he outlined what he had in mind for the year that was to come, 1986 centenary. And things started to move. Now, knowing a little bit about how long it takes to bring a book into print, I was a bit skeptical, and I was giving it about 3 years. I said he certainly would never do it by 1986. But I didn't know my man well enough then. I knew him as a little boy before I left this town, but he was very small at the time. He still kept giving good bullying here. But he exhorted, he inspired, he worked like a trooper, he got people to begin contributions, and the result of it all is what you have here today, and I think something of which the people of this parish and of this neighbourhood indeed, from Blackbray, Conaill and all around there, can well be proud, because it puts down for the first time much of the lore of this particular area. And one of the very valuable things about this book, there are two valuable things that go in it. One is that many of the articles have been written by descendants of the people who took prominent parts in this history, in the 1886 activities and the activities at that time. And the other was that it brings together a lot of other articles that were written, but which were scattered all over various publications and so on. And for the first time, we have together here a book encapsulating, if you like, the history of the district, and indeed going back 3,000 years with Michael McMahon's contributions, for example. So Woodford is certainly not a place that has nothing to offer the passing visitor. And I should hope that after the launching of this book, Linson's and today's distinguished guests who have helped so much by their presence here to launch this book and make its launching a success, that perhaps in the future people will not ask where on earth is Woodford. I never heard of this place before. I think that it will succeed in putting Woodford on the map, and no one can be as proud as the people who were born and bred here on the village street. So I think that there is very much to say, except to emphasize again that under the leadership of Father Conaill, there was a dedicated team who worked and worked and worked at this and brought it out in record time. They got marvellous cooperation from the Conaill Tribune, who are the printers of the book, because a lot of changes had to be made at the last minute and so on. And indeed, the design of the book itself and the cover by Michéal. So that it is a book which I hope nobody is going to go out that door without carrying a copy under his arm, and that will be only the beginning. So, and again, on behalf of the editorial board, I wish to thank all the distinguished speakers here, and indeed all the distinguished people who have come and by their presence have made this an occasion. On behalf of the people of this parish, I thank you all.
Minister of State, Deputies, Senators, Public Representatives, Bishop, Reverend Fathers, ladies and gentlemen, I have come here to join in your celebrations, and I'm not going to start to ruin them by making a long speech. I understand that many people have spoken, and have spoken warmly, of the success that we are celebrating here today, 100 years after the commencement of the plan of campaign. I am pleased to have been invited in Dublin to participate in the launch of the excellent book that has been described in some detail to you. And I am someone who didn't really know where Woodford was until some years ago. I started to work with one of the sons of Woodford, and it is for me personally a great pleasure to finally visit this particular town. But it is a unique pleasure to visit it on the historic celebration of this particular event. It seems incredible to us now that just over 100 years ago, on this island, only 3% of the people owned all of the land that was worked by the rest of us, and that 20 families alone owned 1/5 of it, in other words, the province of Munster, or that all of the productive land of Galway, this county, was owned by 400 landlords. It's beyond our imagination that such a state of affairs could have existed, or indeed that it even endured. But endure it did until the plan of campaign, which mobilised, in my view, a successful combination of social agitation, a righteous sense of justice, and parliamentary reform, combined together to bring about the changes that are documented in the book, which within a period of less than 35 years saw a transfer in legal terms of the ownership of the land from 3% of the population to just over 2/3 of the population of this island. It is right and proper that you are formally commemorating the struggle of your grandparents. It is right and proper that their struggle, which was not always united, which was not always harmonious, but which was ultimately successful, it is right that we should honour that success, and that we should not forget, and that the title of the book indeed refers to the Forgotten Campaign.
On behalf of you all, I would like to express our gratitude to the Minister for his eloquent words of encouragement. I would now call on Mr. Michael McMahon to speak a few words on the subject of the book. Michael McMahon.
My Lord Bishop, distinguished guests, friends. Those of you who have already seen it will realise that this book falls into two parts. The first part commemorates the land war, the part outlined for you by Michéal. Now the second deals with the heritage, if you like, of the region which formed the backdrop to those events. For the strangers here, I might explain that it's that wedge of the southeast of Galway. It's shaped rather like a leg of mutton. It's in between the last and the largest of the lakes on the Shannon and the Ruairi Hills, that range of hills stretching from just south of Ruairi down to Mount Shannon in County Clare. Now, I suppose the northern boundary line of that region, we could say, it's defined by an imaginary line stretching from more or less from the old monastery of Clonfert on the Shannon westwards to Ruairi. It's a known land, a land with a rich heritage. I suppose the dominant physical features are the Ruairi Hills. These were the hills that were immortalised by Michéal Conaill in his book Ruairi, which was for many years, of course, a standard textbook in the schools. It was also the locale of Merryman's Court and Vanita, an event which coincidentally is being commemorated this weekend down in County Clare, an annual summer school which I believe is known euphemistically as the lack in the Clare air. Now it's sometimes said that, you know, landscape and environment, that it influences even the character of the people. And, you know, this was recognized by W.B. Yeats in his famous lines, I dreamt that a great painter had been born to cold Clare rock and Galway rock and thorn. That stem colour and delicate line that is our secret discipline. Now, the secret discipline of the Woodford people, or the Ruairi people, we get a glimpse of it in a rather humorous account written about 200 years ago, and strangely by a young Scottish officer, one Captain Kennedy, who came here to Woodford with a regiment of grenadiers who were infesting the mountains round about. Now, he was a mountaineer man himself, of course, from the Scottish Highlands, but his first impressions of Woodford weren't good. He didn't like a bit of the place, and he wrote, this place, he said, is in a country west of the Shannon, in one of the wildest regions of a disturbed barony. Now, like many a good man before him and after him, he quickly succumbed to the Woodford hospitality, and that hospitality, according to himself, seems to have manifested itself in generous helpings of mountain dew and Woodford mutton. And after a while that seemed to sweeten his pen, because his next statement is a little bit more favourable. He says, for those interested in mountain scenery, I cannot think of a more attractive place. And remember, he's only here for 6 months, and by the time he's leaving, we can almost detect the lump in his throat. And he's apologising to the Woodford people for the inconvenience he had caused. And he ends up his story by saying, when we withdrew, the Woodford people were able to return to their honest calling and brew mountain dew to their heart's content. But it's a bit up, you know, but I can see, I think, Father Stanley looking at his watch, and I finished by saying that, you know, from all I've said, if you can think of any good reason why you shouldn't part with £6 for the few remaining copies of this book that are left, well, then we'd like to hear from you. Thanks very much.
Welcome everybody, especially with Lord Bishop Sean McBride, who is an old friend, I suppose, and by invitation, and all distinguished guests. And I'd like to mention in particular to welcome people who haven't spoken. Desmond Roach, our assistant editor over here, this last week, very humble man. Ruairi Quinn, I think, has already been welcomed in the programme. And next to that is our Minister for State for Agriculture, Paul Compton. I'd like to give him welcome here on the left of the hour. Hopefully he needs no introduction because his father was born in Clondergap, and the Bucks were evicted out there across the Shannon one morning early. Uri Park, Senator Uri Park, made his vote. And I'd like to welcome in particular today another distinguished guest who is Shadow Minister for Defence and also Chairman of the County Council, Noel Tracy. He's left former Chairman of the County Council and TD Michéal. On top of Louis Michéal, our Father Page, as we know, Father Louis is our patron and has a rave on the book if he can translate Irish, and I think he's already said a word to you, but I'd like to welcome also on his right the daughter of Sean McBride, Mary McBride. We have a lot of other distinguished guests, some of them very humble in the background. Matt Luckman, County Councillor, you might give him a welcome also. Matt is at this stage talking to RT, and we'd also like to welcome in particular our County Manager, Mr. Seamus Keating, somewhere in the background as well. County Library Assistant who have, with the County Manager, both of them have been involved also in helping to opening the new library and Heritage Centre, Mary Kavanagh. You might give her a welcome. And there are so many more that I won't mention, just except to join with welcoming all our contributors. There are a few here that haven't been given background. TJ Page is over here on the left hand side. Raymond Keary, Brian Keary, John Slattery, and I don't know many more back there. You might welcome them as well.
It's really wonderful and an honour and a privilege to see you here and to request you to speak and say a few words to this. We're delighted to see you.
Well, I was very honoured to be invited and I was very glad to come down.
Yes.
Because I knew already quite a lot about Woodford and about the planned campaign and all that from my parents.
Yes.
And I think it's about 100 years ago this year my mother was down this part of the country during the elections. So I had quite an interest in that. Apart from that, I'm very worried at the decadence through which the country is going. And I think it's vitally important to have groups such as these to commemorate the struggle the people have had.
Yes, it is, and it still prevails today.
Yes.
I was delighted with the few words you said concerning that it still prevails, and particularly you see in Africa and these places, it's a shame altogether. And indeed, Madam Gordon McBride, your mother, you see, her name is very prominent in these countries, and also down in the county Cork, West Cork, where I came from myself. So you're no strangers to us, I mean, that way. But I'm really delighted to see you. Well, I hope you were satisfied with the day.
Very satisfied.
Yeah, not indeed, undoubtedly. This is your daughter here with you, is it?
No, it's a niece of mine.
A niece of yours, that's right, yeah. Well, however, I haven't anything else to say. You've spoken pretty well there, and I don't want to detain you any longer. I'm sure you're tired with all the talk. But again, I would say that it is really a privilege, and an honour. And I wish you many more years.
Thank you very much.
God bless you indeed. Delighted to see you.
Thank you very much.
Conaill is my name. Right.
Thank you very much.
God bless you. Well, Mr. TD, I'm delighted to see you here at this honourable occasion. And I really think that it is only right and fitting that Sean McBride was here. Because his mother was here 100 years ago.
That's right,
and spoke to the people, you see, according to the book. Yes. And undoubtedly, they had a very hard time here, especially under Clanrickard and those crowds.
Yes.
And I think that something else like this is very important too. Were you happy with it yourself?
I was very happy with the presentation and very impressed with the speakers. They gave us a great history of the area. They put together a very fine book. I was present myself at some fundraising activities in Dublin, and I must say that I never realised there were so many Woodford people in Dublin until I went to the fundraising and the launching in Dublin, and they're very proud of the fact that of their own ancestry and their own heritage, and they have put a lot of work into the book as well. And I hope it will sell well, and the people will enjoy reading this great history.
I hope so. And you see, there's a great talk about small things and places. Now, for example, in the county Galway, you see, Athenry is hardly mentioned at all. And so there's more history attached to Athenry than in the whole of the county Galway, in its own way.
Exactly. Athenry is probably famous more through the fields of Athenry, the recent song, rather than the great history of Athenry. And let's hope that will happen in the not too distant future. I think what they've done in Woodford will be a headline for the people of Athenry.
Right, well, now thank you very much, Michéal, for speaking to you, and I'm delighted to meet you. And God bless you.
God bless you.
Take care of yourself, and thanks very much. Are you delighted to be here today for this honourable occasion?
Oh, thrilled, yes. Well, I love travelling around with Sean.
Travelling around the country.
Yes.
Well, I'm sure you were glad to see Sean McBride here.
Oh, delighted, yes, because this place means a lot to him because of his mother's connections here about 100 years ago.
Yes, I say it was only right and fitting that he should be here himself.
Oh, yes. Especially at his age, it's great that he can come.
It's wonderful, yes. A great man for his age.
He's wonderful, yeah.
Well, apparently from the book that's written and all that, they had a very hard time here.
Yes, I don't know, I haven't read the book now. But
yes. But Madam Gordon McBride played a very strong part in that here with them.
Oh, yes. And she was only about 22 at the time.
Quite young.
Yeah, quite young, yes. And my husband, Seamus, I was speaking on the phone with somebody last night who remembers his father telling him that Maud Gonn gave himself and another man 10 shillings each.
10 shillings?
Each, and that was a lot of money then. Well, and they had a great time, they drank it out in the pub.
In those days it was a lot of money.
Yes.
Lord Clanrickard, you see, was reputed to be having 24,000 a year in those days income. From the tenancy disliked so much. Well, but however, it is grand, I think, that on this occasion that the McBrides were here.
Yes, thank you.
Right. Well, I'm delighted to meet you, and thank you very much,
too.
and God bless you.
Thank you.
Right. Well, Father Stanley, I'm sure you're delighted with the day.
So far, thank God, things are going quite well, thank you.
Yes, well, I just got a little scan at that book, and it's really perfect. I think that is very interesting reading.
Well, we put a lot of work and a lot of research into it, and we hope it will be, people will find it, with a bit of quality and depth, yes.
But it is, and I think that the name really is most appropriate, The Forgotten Campaign. Because there are people, I think, in the county here that have no idea of actually what the conditions were in those days.
Very true, yes, indeed. We put a lot of thought into the title because we covered history, heritage, the land war, and it was difficult, but we came down to this conclusion that this was the key element, was the plan of campaign and how it was neglected and forgotten by people, and so we wanted to emphasise that aspect of it,
Well, I suppose really in those days it was they were afraid to talk, I suppose, to one thing or another, but it's a wonderful thing that it has been brought to light.
Well, it has. Yeah, there were many reasons, I suppose, why it was overlooked, because of the, if you like, the whole revolution, 1916 and so on. We have really forgotten, I suppose, most of the history of the people of that period and with 1916. So I think it is important to go back to that tradition today, to the parliamentary peaceful combination which was Sanders Fort, which was led to the Bannock campaign. Yeah. And it was really what brought us our national freedom, because the GA, the whole literary Celtic revival started from there, really, in that period. And Duggan then was the key man in the whole South East Galway.
Of course, you see, there was a fire kindled, and of course it never went. It was never extinguished.
Exactly, yes, very true.
But really, I think it was wonderful that we had Sean McBride here.
It was, because
see the connections he would let him go on. That was here at age 22.
That's right. Well, Maud Gunn has in her book, she has a chapter on it, which we have included in the book, Servant of the Queen, during her visit to Woodford for the evictions.
That's wonderful to have that in it.
It is,
Yes, but I think really that it was in taking it all in all, I think it was a wonderful achievement, and I hope that will expand.
Yes, well, it's only a beginning. We have only, if you like, volume 1, and we hope to follow it up volume 2 next year, and so far the book is selling very well, so we look forward to another volume and hope we'll follow up with the Bannock campaign and the period which went on for another 5 years, between 1886 and 1891, and also have a lot more heritage and history from South East Galway.
Yes. Oh, you will of course indeed, because it is very rich, you see, in history, really and truly, and Athenry is another place that's very rich.
Well, Athenry, of course, had produced a man who was very prominent here on the other side, but he started off, William Carson, who started off being brought up in Athenry, as you know, in Castlellan, and then later on he went on to promote hurling, very prominent legal representative of farmers and people like that, and eventually, of course, he finished up trying blunt here in Portumna after being arrested in Mutford. He was sent him to jail, and then of course he finished up as become the leader of the Northern Ireland Rebellion. So I mean, Athenry has his connections, as well as the evictions, of course, and the landlord and the with the holding and with Michael Cusick and all that,
Well, now, Father, I'm sure that you have a lot to do, and I want to tell you, and I'm delighted to speak to you, and it was wonderful. I'm very pleased with how the success it was today, and thank you very much indeed, and God bless you.
Thank you. Thanks.
Good morning.